Hi folks, thanks for joining us today. Today's Industry Insights webinar is why sales teams don't understand buyer needs and how to make sure they do. It's based on our latest research from Sales Intelligence Study. I'm Connie Schlossberg, the Digital Marketing Specialist here at Primary Intelligence, and I will be your host for today's webinar. Just a few quick housekeeping items before we get started. We will send you the link to the recording as soon as we can. Look for that coming your way. We'll try to answer any questions at the end of the presentation, but if we can't get to them, Carolyn will get back with you as soon as she can. Also, if you can join us today on Twitter, we appreciate the engagement. Use hashtag buyer needs, so feel free to send out tweets as the presentation goes on. Now it's my pleasure to introduce Carolyn Galvin. She has many years of experience in the intelligence space, and we're lucky to have her serving as our Director of Industry Insights. Carolyn, are you ready?
I sure am. Thank you so much, Connie, and thanks to all of you for joining us today. We are really excited to share with you some of the findings from our most recent Industry Insights report entitled Understanding Buyer Needs. We've got a lot of information to cover today in the next 30 minutes, so we'll go ahead and dive right in. For our agenda, we will provide just a very brief overview of primary intelligence, some information about our background and where we are today. We'll then discuss the research background, why we wanted to do a sales intelligence study, and some of the more more interesting background goals and methodologies. We'll then go into the meat of the presentation today, the key findings, and we'll follow that with some suggestions and recommendations in terms of how you can improve or how your sales teams can improve. And then we'll conclude with some Q&A. Ken Allred is our CEO and founder of Primary Intelligence. Along with 3 colleagues, Ken founded Primary Intelligence 15 years ago in his basement in his home in Draper, Utah. And at the time, Ken was a sales professional, but he didn't always understand why he was winning or why he was losing deals. So he started coming up with some methodologies and models in terms of how to better understand why he was winning and losing. And as he did this, he, along with his colleagues, decided that they could help other companies also understand why they're winning and why they're losing deals. From those very humble beginnings in Ken's basement in Draper, Utah, Primary Intelligence has grown to a global organization. Today, we manage close to 600 win-loss and customer experience programs for our clients around the world. I won't read all of these statistics to you, but I would point out that of the Fortune 20, 6 of those companies are Primary Intelligence customers today. So just a little bit of background about Primary Intelligence, and now we'll turn to the research findings. We reached out to over 10,000 buyers over the past 7 years or so, and we went back to 2008 in terms of collecting information and looking at information for this study. So we've got over 10,000 buyer points of reference for the research. And we had several goals in terms of what we were trying to understand for this research. We wanted to, first of all, quantify the importance of understanding buyer needs. So at Primary Intelligence, we evaluate sales effectiveness using 9 standard criteria. Criteria such as product knowledge or the sales team's presentation and demonstration, the sales rep's responsiveness, so 9 different categories. And understanding buyer needs is one of those 9 standard categories that we ask buyers to rate our clients on, as well as other sales reps who were in the shortlisted opportunity. And at Primary Intelligence, our consultants and our analysts who work with our clients on a daily basis had a hunch that understanding buyer needs was important, but we really wanted to quantify that, and we wanted to determine from a data perspective if that was truly an important area for buyers in terms of sales evaluations. We also wanted to understand buyer perceptions of sales effectiveness. So are sales reps hitting the mark in terms of understanding the needs of their buyers? Are they missing the mark? And then importantly, are there any differences in terms of sales performance based on different industries, different geographies, deal size, or organizational size? So we wanted to really tease out that type of information as well. We also wanted to determine if there was any impact on other areas of the evaluation in terms of understanding buyer needs that were outside of the control of the sales team. So things such as product quality, things that sales teams don't necessarily have a lot of control over, but there may be and were there spillover effects in terms of understanding buyer needs and the impact of those specific areas. And then finally, we wanted to arm sales teams with actionable strategies in terms of how they can improve their understanding of buyer needs. So those were really the goals in terms of the research. And now we'll dive into the key findings. We'll go into the minds of our buyers and we'll share with you their perceptions of how sales teams are doing in terms of understanding buyer needs. As I mentioned just a minute ago, we used 9 standard categories to evaluate sales effectiveness, and you can see them listed here on the screen. As you can also see, understanding your buyer needs or understanding buyers' business needs was the most important category to buyers, far outreaching the other categories in terms of the most important criteria that B2B buyers are using to rate sales effectiveness in different evaluations. We see no reason why this will change in the future. We see no reason why this will decline in importance in either the near or the long term. We literally do thousands of interviews with B2B buyers every year, and respondents tell us loudly and clearly in the telephone interviews when the sales reps take the time to really understand buyer environments, their markets, their competitors, why it's important to them now to be looking at different solutions or services and doing the evaluation. Buyers also tell us when they are upset with reps who do not take the time to listen to and understand their business needs. We can hear through the telephone conversations that we have with buyers disdain, sometimes contempt in their voice for reps who just want to make a fast sale and move on to the next deal. And many times we will hear from buyers that they will resist purchasing from these types of sellers in the future. So really, really important from a buyer perspective that the sales rep takes the time, has the patience, and really understands their business needs. So we can see here that understanding business needs is very important. Now we're going to get into some of the findings from the research. We're going to look first of all at the impact of understanding buyer needs on win rates and see if there's any sort of relationship there. So as you can see from this slide, we've got it separated out into wins on the left and losses on the right. And we've color-coded the results such that using primary intelligence 11-point scale, so 0 to 10 points, the rating scale that we use, red is indicating a poor performance. So that's when buyers are rating sales reps or sales teams poorly as 0 to 6 on that rating scale of 0 to 10. Yellow would be an average rating of 7 to 8, and green would be an excellent rating of 9 to 10. And as you can see here, nearly 60% of sales reps who won in competitive opportunities earned excellent ratings when their buyers were asked to judge their effectiveness in terms of understanding their buyer needs. In contrast, less than a third of reps, so 31%, who lost deals earned excellent ratings. We also saw from the data that sales reps who successfully demonstrated an understanding of their buyer needs had a much higher percentage of strong wins. So these are wins in which buyers overwhelmingly chose their solution over competitors, while sales teams who failed to understand buyer needs scored highest in strong losses. So as you may know, at Primary Intelligence, we categorize all wins and all losses into three categories: strong, moderate, and weak. So again, we're seeing that when sellers take the time to understand buyer needs, they're having a much higher percentage of strong wins versus reps who are not taking the time to understand buyer needs are getting a much higher percentage of strong losses. So very direct relationship and impact there. Now I'd like to share with you some findings in terms of decision satisfaction. So one of the questions we ask in our interviews of B2B buyers is their overall decision satisfaction in terms of their purchase from the winning vendor. So it's one of our final questions in the telephone interview, and we ask them to rate their satisfaction on that 0 to 10 point scale. When we cross-reference decision satisfaction with understanding buyer needs, we're seeing a direct impact of the sales team's ability to understand buyer needs on buyers' decision satisfaction. So we can clearly see here that sales reps who received high ratings in their ability to understand buyer needs had a correspondingly higher rating from buyers in decision satisfaction. Over 3/4 of buyers, so the 77%, who rated sales reps as excellent in understanding their needs, were also rating decision satisfaction as excellent. And in contrast, only about 1/3 or 32% rated their decision satisfaction as excellent when sales reps failed to understand their business needs. We can also see a much higher percentage of poor ratings for decision satisfaction when understanding business needs was poor compared to instances where reps did a good job. So we can see that when buyers rated their decision satisfaction as excellent, only 2% of buyers gave reps a poor rating compared to 29% of buyers who said their decision satisfaction was poor and rated the rep's ability to understand business needs as poor. So again, seeing a direct relationship here between understanding buyer needs and overall decision satisfaction. Now we'll look at that spillover effect that I mentioned just a few minutes ago. So these again are areas where the sales team or the sales rep probably has very little impact over an element of the process. So certainly in some companies, sales teams do have influence over product quality, but for the most part, they're simply feeding in feedback from customers in terms of product quality. Ultimately, the product team, product management, has ultimate decision authority for features and functionality that are going into a company's products. But we can see here that buyers are rating product quality higher when sales teams are doing a solid job of understanding buyer needs. Nearly 3/4 of buyers, so 72% of buyers who rated product quality as excellent when they also judged sales reps as excellent in understanding their buyer needs, and conversely, close to 60% of buyers rated product quality as poor when sales teams were also deemed poor in terms of understanding buyer needs. So again, very strong correlation here between understanding buyer needs and the spillover effect in terms of product quality. We also look at two other KPIs, key performance indicators, which are recommendation likelihood and future business likelihood. And those two areas, recommendation and future business, along with product quality, make up the KPIs that we evaluate for our clients. We saw very similar scores for recommendation likelihood and future business likelihood as we saw to product quality. Some slight variations here and there, but for the most part, it's very similar ratings as well. So we know that understanding buyer needs is critical in terms of B2B evaluations and win rates, decision satisfaction, and spillover effect. The question then that we have to ask is, if it's so important to understand our buyers' business needs, how are we doing? How are the sales teams that are out there selling every day, how are they doing in terms of understanding those buyer needs? Well, unfortunately, we're not doing so great. As you can see here, again, we're using the same color coding, so green would be excellent. Less than half of all sales reps are doing an excellent job in terms of meeting their buyers' needs. And 1 in 5 are doing a poor job, so they're getting the ratings in the 0 to 6 category. Within the report, we do go into considerable detail. We talk about specific industries that are doing better than others, specific geographic regions that are doing better than others, and we also look at specific scenarios, so things such as deal size or organizational size that are doing better than others as well. But overall, we've got some room for improvement, and at this point then I'd like to share with you some areas of how we can improve in terms of understanding buyer needs. So the first recommendation that we really hear loud and clearly from B2B buyers is the importance of listening. And, we talk a lot about this, and sometimes people will say, of course I listen to what my buyers are telling me, but there's a difference between passive listening and active listening. And really when we're talking with our buyers and trying to understand their needs, we really need to be in that active listening mode, not thinking about what we're going to be doing later today, not thinking about what we're going to be having for dinner tonight, but really listening to what the person is saying. So what that means is, if you need to really make sure that you are present mentally in the conversation, is taking notes, making sure that you're writing down the most important things that your buyers are telling you, and also asking follow-up questions, probing for specificity so that you're able to match the appropriate solution to buyer needs. We've also found and heard from buyers that it's helpful to verbally summarize the most important points of the discussion to really ensure that there's uniformity in terms of understanding between buyer needs and what the sales rep has heard. And then also providing a written summary of the meeting to key players so that everybody stays on the same page. This is especially important for people who may not be at the meeting but may still need to know the meeting notes and what transpired at that meeting. So really actively listening is quite important. Another strategy that we recommend is the importance of having a plan for large buyer teams. So in our research that we did in terms of understanding buyer needs, we found that sales teams who sell into large organizations with multifunctional buyer teams are generally rated lower in their ability to understand buyer needs compared with sellers who are targeting smaller organizations. So it's really important to develop a strategy for these larger buyer teams. A lot of times, as you know, these teams have competing sets of demands. They have very large, complex opportunities in many cases. They span different geographies or divisions or functional areas, and really important to understand the competing demands and different drivers for different elements of the organization. One thing that you can do here in terms of really making sure that you've got a strategy is identifying everyone, all of the individuals who are directly or indirectly involved in the deal, and assigning them a buyer type. So we know, for example, that there's going to be an ultimate decision maker. Who is that individual? There's usually also a financial buyer. Who's that person? There's a technical buyer looking at features and functionality. There may be a human resource buyer. There's certainly an end user. What are their needs? And then in many industries, such as healthcare, we see strong influences from consultants. So influencers who may not ultimately be making the decision, but certainly have a strong influence over the final decision. So really assigning different buyer types to each of those different roles. And then after that, working with each buyer type to really try and understand their specific needs, develop buyer personas. How do they like to buy? How are their needs impacting their roles, their teams, their organizations directly? So trying to determine those different types of buyers and buyer personas is critically important, again, especially for very large buyer teams. Another strategy is the importance of customization. Now, Many customized products, as you know, are found in the B2C environment, as you can see here with the various different consumer products that are available today. However, there still are opportunities to customize B2B offers as well. And while it may seem obvious to all of us on the call today, I'll just point out, again, from that buyer feedback that we hear directly from our clients' buyers, buyers strongly dislike cookie-cutter approaches to solving their business problems. Even something as simple as putting a prospect's logo on a PowerPoint presentation can be extremely helpful, or putting their actual data in a proof of concept can be extremely helpful. We also often hear a lot of tension between customized offers, which clients so desperately want. They want the solution to really meet their needs, but there's a tension between those customized offers and not wanting to spend a lot in terms of professional services, dollars or money, and a lot of time in terms of customizing the solution too much. And that's certainly a tension that's real and that we need to consider. But a lot of times there are some reasonable modifications that we can make to solutions that can better meet buyer needs. And putting buyers in touch with partners who specialize in certain industries or technology solutions can be very helpful. Recommending consultants that specialize in bridging a gap between an out-of-the-box solution and a customized approach can also be very helpful as well. Along with customization, we hear from buyers frequently that they really like reps and teams who are creative. And this is especially important when there are seemingly intractable issues that require some skillful maneuvering through different channels of approval within the vendor organization. Buyers like to know that their reps are savvy enough that they can get creative with how they're going to resolve some issues that they might have. So what does this mean? What does this look like? Well, it could be, for example, creative financing options. Of course, we need to protect the needs and the requirements of the seller, but maybe there are some ways that we can creatively finance the solution so that it will better meet the buyer needs. Or exploring contract options that take the needs of the buyers into account, still protecting the seller's interest, but maybe there's a better way that we can structure a contract that might be helpful for more customers than just that one particular customer. In general, this is adopting a mindset of, let me ask about that. I'm not sure, but I'll find out for you, as opposed to a mindset of, no, we don't do that here, and just closing the door on any sort of creative solution altogether. Another strategy is the importance of partnering. And I know that partnering has kind of become a buzzword, and people talk about this. They throw out the word partnering all the time. But I will tell you that, again, in our interviews with B2B buyers, it's really important. And the higher that we go in the organizational structure, the more individuals are looking for strategic partnerships. So, for example, when we interview a CIO, a CFO, a CMO, a CEO, these people really want to make sure that their vendor has skin in the game, that they're going to stand with them through thick and thin, sickness and health, almost like a marriage, if you will, that you're going to be around for them in the long term. So what does this look like in terms of strategies? Well, really making sure that the sales team, sales rep, is portraying a partnership mentality, so using the right words, the right outreach, the right gestures, including body language, to really portray that partnership feeling. Taking the time also to educate buyers and end users about solution functionality, about industry best practices, or any sort of strategic issues. So buyers, they're very savvy, as you know. They know when you've closed the deal, and as a rep, you could simply move on. They also know when you stay around and you make sure that there is a smooth transition between yourself and the account team that's going to manage their account over the long term. They're very, very appreciative when you share with them best practices or strategic issues that are going on in the industry. They look to you as an expert, and that's what you want them to do. So anytime that you can portray that partnership, that longevity to them, that's going to be a win for you overall. Another strategy is technical expertise. So many sales reps are very technically savvy today, but in fast-moving industries especially, such as technology industries, that technical savviness can be short-lived because product functionality is changing so quickly. So while buyers don't necessarily need or look for technical expertise at the first, second, or even third meeting that you have with them, they would appreciate and they do appreciate having the technical expertise at the mid-level of the cycle or at some point, maybe toward the end of the cycle, where they can make sure that they're getting the questions, their technical, in-depth technical questions answered. Certainly, you as a rep can go back to your technical experts in-house and you can find the information for them, and many companies do that. But buyers appreciate when you can cut down on those cycles and they can speak face-to-face with your technical experts and get their questions answered. If you can share a roadmap with them, that's even better. They're looking for technical specificity in terms of your solution and where you're headed. And then a final suggestion or recommendation in terms of improving your understanding of buyer needs is the importance of training, coaching, mentoring. We include some research in the industry report, in the full report, that was published several years ago by two companies, Corporate Visions and Training Industry Incorporated. And in the research that they conducted, they show that sales teams really believe that training to better understand customer business needs is the most important area customers should focus on when developing and delivering sales training programs. Of their respondents, close to two-thirds, so 63% of their survey respondents voiced support for training in terms of understanding buyer needs. So what does this look like in terms of rolling this out? Well, it's role play scenarios, it's on-site training, it's video tutorials, it's ongoing conference calls, conducting regular checkups to really verify that skills are being maintained and that sales teams and sales reps are proficient, again, especially in very fast-moving industries such as technology industries. We include some additional recommendations in the full report, but we wanted to just give you a taste of some of the recommendations that we included in the report in the presentation today. So that concludes my comments in terms of the formal presentation. I will now turn it back over to Connie for any questions that have come up during the presentation. Connie?
Yes, hi, Carolyn. It looks like we have time for one question. The question is, how can I use the report to benchmark how well my company is doing in understanding buyer needs?
That's a great question, Connie, and we are putting together an offer for Primary Intelligence customers where we will offer to benchmark how you are doing against the industry overall. And we've got different cuts of the data that we're proposing, and certainly if you'd like the data cut differently, we can certainly look at that as well. But we are coming out with an offer likely within the next 2 to 4 weeks for Primary Intelligence customers where you can really benchmark your sales team's effectiveness against the industry overall. If you do think of any other questions, or if there are any other questions, please jot them down in the chat window, and I will get back to you within the next 1 to 2 business days, and I would be happy to follow up with you on any additional questions that you have either today or that you come up with in the coming days. I wanted to mention just a couple of things before we end today. One is that One is that we do have more information about the full report at this URL, and we will be including the information in this URL for you in our GoToWebinar console. So you can see in your GoToWebinar console a download entitled Primary Intelligence Helpful Links, and this link is included in that download. I would also like to appeal to you, if you have not done so already, we would really appreciate your participation in our 2015 State of Win-Loss Research Report. We are currently collecting input from respondents right now for our 2015 report. Some of you may know that we completed a 2014 State of Win-Loss report. If you do participate and provide your input, we will provide you with a complimentary copy of the report when it's published in December. So this URL, as well as the report URL and additional links, can be found again in your GoToWebinar console. So this is the top link here is the Understanding Buyer Needs report that I showed you on the previous slide. We've also got an infographic, a video, and some additional helpful URLs here as well. So please feel free to download those and click on those links for more information. I would also invite you to connect with us. We are on LinkedIn and on Twitter. We also have a blog at primaryintel.com/blog, and we would love to connect with you and hear what you have to say and communicate with you. Finally, I would just like to thank everyone for your time and your interest. And again, if there are any additional questions, I will be sure to follow up with you within the next several days. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a great rest of your day.